with the Last Dance Michael Jordan documentary wrapping up this weekend. It did get us thinking as a group, if the NFL had its own version of the Last Dance, which team, which player, which era of the league would be the best to focus on a 10-part type doc that people would get excited about. So let's throw out some options, and I'll start with you, The Quiet Storm, Mark Sessler.
Well, I really tried to find someone who brought the same sort of aura and personal flair that Jordan did. Jordan made me an NBA fan. And when I look at inside our own building, I can look at Deion Sanders, primetime, as someone who, like Jordan, revolutionized sort of what we thought about football from a marketing angle. The primetime brand, he was a brand unto himself. And on the field, I think he revolutionized special teams. You see this clip right here. He tugged an average Falcons team into the playoffs and made them must-watch material. He was an absolute fire starter with the 94 Niners, helping them to a Super Bowl. And then a year later goes to the 95 Cowboys. That's part of two dynasties and helps them Super Bowl. All the while, he is engaged in a high-octane baseball career, 9 seasons, and is one of the only players we can point to in the history of sports to have played in an NFL game and then gone and played in a baseball game the same day. A huge figure for the Atlanta Braves. So that's 3 huge teams that Deion played a major role in. And I'd say this, at the end of his football career, he leaves, he comes back 4 years later, not 4 months, 4 years later, to play for the Ravens for 2 seasons. And I mean, the overall personal journey of Deion and who he was and the revelations he experienced during his career, I mean, there's just not that many guys like him. He'd be my pick.
Deion came back at age 37 and took 37 as his number with the Ravens. Mark, you ever think, I know we're in a COVID-19 world, so we're not all in the office, but once you get back in there, you bump into Deion at the water cooler, at the commissary, say, hey, buddy, I got a project. Maybe I can produce it. You start, we make some guap.
Yeah, it feels logical. I mean, and I will say this, it's not unusual for him to occasionally call me up and say, hey, I just checked out that low-octane NFL.com article that you wrote, buried on the site, really liked it, offered a lot. Let's talk again soon.
Yeah, this feels like a long apology from Mark from the time our podcast made a huge mess in the Deion studio, and that was a little controversial, never allowed in there.
They locked that door afterwards.
Right. It's a great choice, Mark, because you got to have not only the stats and the stature, but you got to have the personality to carry a series like this. And Deion has that. Not only does he touch, these great dynasties, but he's a great dynasty unto himself. He changed the game. He was a 9-time first team all-pro player. And there's all this talk, one of the most impressive, things I've seen in sports. Michael Jordan hit 200 after not playing for 15 years. How about contributing to a baseball playoff run in the middle of your all-star, all-pro football career? That's more impressive. What Deion did has not been done since. I don't think it'll ever be done again.
You got footage of the helicopter coming into the Atlanta Braves baseball games. I mean, how fun is that? You talk about a guy, I think of him as no other defensive player in the NFL got me out of my seat more frequently than Deion, with regularity. And that, whereas with Jordan's dalliance on the baseball field, Deion transferred that to the diamond. I grew up watching the Cincinnati Reds, and some of their most exciting moments of the 90s were with Deion batting leadoff. He left the team. He got traded. He came back in his first game back, led off the game with a home run. He wasn't even a home run hitter. He just embraced the moment like that.
He broke into the major leagues with my Yankees, and there was a famous game. It was Bo Jackson, the other 2 sports star, with the Royals against Deion and the Yankees. Bo hit 3 home runs in his first 3 at-bats in the Bronx, and then Deion hits an inside-the-park home run after Bo dives for a ball, and he goes all the way around the bases, a memorable play in his career. Good one, Mark. We're off to a good start here. I love it. How about you, Greg?
I'll jump in with Bill Belichick. And look, I know we've seen a lot of Bill Belichick, but kind of like Deion Sanders,
the electricity meter stays at the same level. I'm just saying
NFL films, we've seen a lot of Bill Belichick, but if you're going to do a series like this, it has to be a titanic figure. It has to be an all-time great. Bill Belichick, to me, is the defining NFL figure of the last 2 decades. He had a long career before that, but what they've done, the Patriots, in the last 2 decades is unprecedented, not just in NFL history, but in American sports history. And I think what we've lacked in a lot of the features on him, and sometimes it's him and Parcells, sometimes it's him and Saman, sometimes it's one season, is perspective, because we're in the middle of it. And I think we've struggled to put what the Patriots and Bill Belichick have done in perspective. So what I want to see is maybe after his career, some real talk, some players really talking about what it's like, because before Belichick can kind of, massage the message and controlled a lot of what the media did. There was a great book called Patriot Reign by Michael Holley early in the tenure, and you saw a lot of real stuff, and you can talk about the 18-1 season. You can talk about the videotape controversy, and you can talk about the greatness, because there hasn't been any franchise in the sport that we've covered that's had greatness like this Bill Belichick Patriots team.
That's certainly fair. Listen, is exciting to think that you would get a deep dive on the Patriot way. And that would, for me, that's what it would have to be, right, Wes? It would have to be a story where we're learning things that Belichick would have given up his right thumb to keep secret during his coaching reign.
When I think of Belichick, I think about the playbooks, the game plans that are in the Hall of Fame, that are in Canton, when he allowed Thurman Thomas to get his, but shut down the rest of the Bills' offense, when he shut down Marshall Faulk to upset the Rams in one of the biggest upsets in playoff history. And I think there's a lot to unpile there. That's why the defining book on him is called The Education of Bill Belichick, because it is about education, his dad being the greatest scout of the first 50 years of football.
Yeah, I think the Steve Belichick factor, father, but also son, and maybe what that will mean for the Patriots having the son in camp there right now. But also, I'd want firsthand accounts from those who considered him an enemy, an on-field enemy. There has to be honest, real dirt and everything that we don't know about. That would be captivating.
And we're talking about NFL version of The Last Dance, the great Jordan doc that's wrapping up this weekend. And I was thinking about watching the great Niners teams there. In the NBA, it was the Celtics and the Lakers. They were the teams of the 80s. And in the NFL West, it was the Niners and the Bill Walsh, Joe Montana teams. That's where you're going to go with your choice, isn't it?
Indeed it was. Let's go back to the mid-'80s. Just as Michael Jordan is entering the NBA, the 1985 Giants end the 49ers season in the playoffs, beating them 17-3 and prompting Bill Parcells to sneer, "What do you think of that West Coast offense now?" And football fans around the country are thinking, what's a West Coast offense? Let's go back to 1970 on the timeline, just like The Last Dance goes back on the timeline. A rifle-armed quarterback named Greg Cook is coming off the greatest rookie quarterback season in NFL history for the expansion Bengals, but he never plays again after suffering a torn rotator cuff. Legendary coach Paul Brown is forced to trade for a weak-armed backup. And then Brown and his young play caller, Bill Walsh, get to work on a new rollout-based offense designed for short, quick passes that are an extension of the running game. Walsh starts scripting openers for the first 10 plays of the game. The Bengals shock the league, win the division with their new offense. Yet when Brown leaves the sidelines for the owner's box in the mid-'70s, he bypasses Walsh for the head coach's job, believing the brains behind that Ohio River offense wasn't tough enough to be the head coach. So Walsh takes his act to San Francisco, beats Paul Brown and the Bengals in Super Bowl 16, and then again in Super Bowl 23. Jerry Rice shreds the Bengals defense for 215 yards and a touchdown. Joe Montana hits John Taylor for the game-winning score in the most thrilling Super Bowl of the decade. And then Mike Shanahan takes over as offensive coordinator in the 90s. The 49ers reign over the NFL just as the Bulls dynasty begins in the NBA. Fast forward 30 more years, the 49ers are back in the Super Bowl with Mike Shanahan's son Kyle running the West Coast offense. It's a revolutionary offense that was ridiculed as soft and finesse when Bill Walsh brought it to the NFL, and now it's integrated throughout the league. Walsh, Montana, Rice oversaw the triumph of the forward pass over the boring running game, and now the NFL is greater for that experience.
Well, and Wes is too modest to. Yeah, I think this is a great pick.
We need like a 10-part documentary here. We need 10 hours to fill. And what we're doing here, we're really spanning the generations here of the NFL with all a central theme. Wes, again, you have a future as a television producer. I can feel it.
I want to take the Ken Burns role on this one. Nobody really is Michael Jordan in the NFL, and you need a combination of guys. And that's why I think you go to Walsh, Montana, and Rice, because you look at a guy like Babe Ruth or Michael Jordan, it's look how he elevated his franchise. Look how he revolutionized the position he played. Look how he raised the profile of the entire sport. And that's what the West Coast offense did. Quarterback was played so much differently after Montana and Walsh got a hold of it.
I'd say this too. Wes is a modest man, but he has written an incredible long form in the recent past called the Ohio River Offense that basically outlines everything you've just talked about, Wes. And I'd pair that with a watching of one of the best football lives I've seen on the forward pass, and that the education of these two things and how schemes are passed down. We talk about coaching trees all the time, but the lineage of scheme and how it changed football, to your point, Wes, from a run heavy, black and blue type game in the 70s to something completely different today.
And jumping off a point Wes made there, and I'll throw mine out. You guys, great work by you guys. I was racking my brain. I could not figure out someone that would actually, in terms of an individual, because in American sports, Babe Ruth, Wes mentioned, Muhammad Ali, Jordan, obviously. How is it that the NFL has been the most popular, most beloved sport in America for decades now, and yet we haven't had that guy? So now I'm going to throw out some optimism, Greg, and I know you're a very optimistic person, so you'll love this. Here's some optimism in times that are not so optimistic in life right now. How about the idea that this guy, this person, has not yet arrived? The man who will take NFL from one place and make it a truly global brand. The man that will go down as a legend of legends has not yet touched down on this earth. Maybe he's a 7-year-old boy in Rockland County, where I'm from. Maybe he's in college right now. Maybe he won't be born for 20 years. It is coming, Greg. I love it. The Pearl River Comet to save the NFL or take it to another level.
Well, how about this for optimism? Maybe he's already in the NFL. I mean, I don't know. I know Chris Wesseling doesn't like to talk up Patrick Mahomes too much, but one guy in the first season, he's a starter in the league, he's the MVP and changes the game. The next year he wins the Super Bowl and he's the Super Bowl MVP. I mean, it's early. It's early, but he might be our guy.
My one concern is trying to pump up someone in the age of Twitter. I don't know if, there's not much to learn about these people at this point.